Well, it's election season once again and time for more candidate conversations. I'm here now with Eric Valley. He's running for Mason County District Court Judge. Hi, Eric. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I am well. Thanks for coming on and talking with me and giving an opportunity for the voters out there to learn a little bit more about yourself. So give us some background on you and why you want to be the next District Court Judge.
Thank you. I will. Those two are related directly and importantly, I believe. I grew up here. I wasn't born here. I was born in Billings, Montana, as the son of an Air Force officer whose dad grew up here. So my grandfather grew up here. My dad grew up here. I was an Air Force brat. I spent second and part of third grade here while he was in Thailand during the Vietnam War, and then spent the next 4 years in Las Vegas, came home for 8th grade through high school. I spent 12 years away for college and law school and 4 years in New York City. I've been back in the Northwest since 1991, back in Shelton since 1995. I came back to Shelton from Seattle to work for 3 years as a Mason County Deputy Prosecuting Attorney doing criminal appeals in the Growth Management Act, and I ended up doing truancies and district court criminal prosecution and juvenile prosecution. I left the office there in 1998 and have been a criminal defense and a family law attorney and a small-town attorney. I do various kinds of things as a small-town attorney would. I've had the same office on Railroad Avenue since 1998. So for the past 20 years, as I said to Judge Meadows in discussing this, I said, if anyone has wanted to find me any day of the week for the last 20 years, I've been in the same place. And she said, though, the swimming pool. Because I'm also a master's swimmer. I'm a national champion master's swimmer. And I say this only to say I set goals. I'm a serious-minded person who's from here and has the best interests of the community at heart. I'm qualified, and I work hard to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish and that I think are important, such as my tagline in this campaign, in my voter's guide, the official state voter's guide that is, we can all get, is hard work and personal accountability. So I want to preside over a court that treats people with dignity and respect while demanding personal accountability, both to the rule, most importantly, to the rule of law. A court's role is limited to the application of the law and the sanctions if one has been found to have violated a criminal law. But of course, district court is so much more. And really that leads me to another point. I'm qualified uniquely and very well on the law. But the bigger part of this job is what comes after we apply the law. It's the discretion. It's the vast amount of discretionary power that a district court judge holds and wields over the people. My agenda is not far right, it's not far left, it is in the middle, and that's who I've always been. And through this campaign, I've been to different functions for both major parties, and it's gratifying to have learned in that actual physical manner. Oh, I'm right where I ought to be. I'm not one of them, and I'm not one of them. So it's that. So my agenda is simply to administer the will and the values of the community that I grew up in, that made me who and what I am, and whom I have been serving since I got back here, and even before. I don't want to overstate this and make myself more than I am. People who have known me all my life support me in this bid, except for two families, and I could tell you who they are, but they don't want me to, and I wouldn't. But every people I've known, for instance, at the Kiwanis Pancake Breakfast, a married couple I know, said, Eric, we voted for you. It's okay. So I know the community, and my only agenda is to live up to the expectations of those people I respect. And to do that by running a court with decorum, professionalism, and I moving forward. And I'm going on, you asked me one simple question, but all of these things are related. And I think exciting change and good things are coming to Mason County. And I just have started saying this over this past week and weekend. There are too many people here for us to become a ghost town, okay? Which means we're not going anywhere. And things will happen then. I mean, and you and I have talked a little bit. I've gotten to know you a little bit in this campaign. You're relatively new, but you're part of this business right here, this news outlet. Good things are happening here. I saw you at that Highway 101 mixer with that big world-famous rock band. And people I've known in this community for the last 20 years, somebody said to me, Valley, Everclear is here, and you're here. This is Shelton. This is Mason County. Young people are voting. That's something that's happening now. But also, I know where I am. I'm in Mason County. I need to win this election for the good of my community with people who were not at the Everclear concert. Them, yes, but also, and the older voters. at the Victor Improvement Club where I was last night, there weren't nobody who was there was at Everclear at the airport. You know, everybody there was over 60, and it was a wonderful group of people in a wonderful place they meet monthly for a potluck. I said, do we pay? They're like, no, we come here once a month, and they read minutes. It's nothing other than a community association. That's who I want to be the judge for.
You mentioned a couple things that I want to delve into a little deeper. What would the typical docket look like in your courtroom regarding to the pace of the cases, how you interact with the prosecutors, with the defendants, and even with the folks who may be in the galley?
I remember some of my first appearances in court. It was in a federal court. I was no part of it, but there was a federal judge in New Orleans where I went to law school, and he said, "Counsel, I see you're wearing the same ill-fitting blue blazer you were wearing the last time you were in my courtroom." Well, that's not how I would behave as a judge. So dignity and decorum and efficiency, time, and I think time management. I've written this publicly on a questionnaire. My court would start on time, but what I wrote was, and I don't mean to criticize anybody, it's just as an example of a certain court somewhere where you have warrant quash hearings. That's a weird verb. Everybody wants to say they squash their warrant, and a lot of people know one quashes a warrant, Quashes. That would happen before I'm there for a scheduled hearing with my client on a Tuesday or a Friday. That's not going to happen in my court. Now, I know also, anybody who sits in this chair for an interview who's not a judge over there who says they know how to fix things is wrong. I'm not saying their solution is wrong. I'm saying if they think they know, and I'm including myself. What I'm saying is I recognize that as an issue. I would also say I go to different courts. I'm fortunate to be able to do most of my work here in Mason County. Here in Mason County. I know lawyers who travel to Clark County and Pierce County on a regular basis, and I've been to Clark County for cases in the last 5 years, but I don't want to go there. We're slow. Our courts are slow. To take a plea in Mason County District or Municipal, which is Shelton Municipal, or I don't know about Superior, and I'm not trying to criticize anybody. I'm saying this is how Tom Dolan does it in Grays Harbor District County Court in Montesano. Sir, have you read the form? I have, Your Honor. Do you understand the form? Yes, I do, Your Honor. Do you have any? I'll stop with all the time. Do you have any questions? No. Is that your signature? Yes. How do you plead to the charge of driving with license suspended? Guilty, Your Honor. Okay. That's less than a minute. That was fast. It'll probably be more like, 2 to 5 minutes. It doesn't need to take 40 minutes. And there are ways to do that. And that's kind of what I meant. It's time for Mason County to present to the world a forward-looking, and I'm not saying anybody was ever backward-looking. An unfortunate phrase comes to the room, the elephant in the room. Judge Meadows is retiring. I'm not talking about Judge Meadows' court. I'm talking about the next court. That's what I want it to be. And I think I know how to do that. I've been in federal and state courts all over for the last 30 years.
What factors are considered in granting and setting bail amounts for defendants, and what do you believe is the primary consideration?
I will say this. That's funny you say that, but it's funny because there's a specific court rule that applies. There are rules that apply to the courts and to the profession of law, and in a criminal court, there are the criminal rules, the CRRs, and the civil rules, the CRs. That's for superior court. For district court, it's the CRRLJs and the CRLJs for civil rules for courts of limited jurisdiction. I believe, and I think I'm right, it's Rule 3.2. It's CRR, Criminal Rule 3.2, sets out 3 criteria for setting bail. Now, these all go back to the Magna Carta. It's like the right to a speedy trial. Magna Carta 1215 took the king prisoner, said you can stay king if you agree to certain things, like you can't keep throwing people in jail and keeping them there forever. Okay, it's the right to speedy trial. What does it mean? It means in this state what the Supreme Court says it means when they promulgate these rules. So, Criminal Rule 3.2, setting the bail requirements, promulgated, fancy word for, they make it up. They make it, the Supreme Court, and they have a public comment period from lawyers. And so the rule has 3 criteria, and they are flight risk, serious danger of committing a violent crime, and a likelihood or potential, and the exact language does escape me, and that's another one of my slogans: read the rules and pay attention to detail. So let's get Criminal Rule 3.2 out here, but I can tell you the third is interference with the administration of justice. So if here's another elephant in the room in my mind, and I'll just say this. $1 million bail on an indigent client for a misdemeanor crime is, in my legal estimation, my considered legal opinion, de facto unconstitutional. You cannot impose $1 million bail on an indigent client for a misdemeanor crime, because the three criteria are you a flight risk? Well, the law presumes release, and then a bail has to be a reasonable amount. So if you're indigent and it's a misdemeanor, $1 million is not reasonable. So then, but let's move on from that. The criteria are you a flight risk? Do you have a history of warrants? Then that bail needs to be and I'm not trying to advocate for lower bails or letting people out. What I'm saying, a reasonable bail is a bail sufficient to make a guy who's not loaded stick around. Now, generally, people don't post cash bails. They buy a bond for 10% of the bail amount. So a $25,000 bail will cost you $2,500. So it's a reasonable bail. Our jail's been overcrowded since, I think it opened in 1986, but I haven't Googled that. I know, though, that the jail has been literally over capacity since the day it opened, which was more than 30 years ago. So we need more of everything. And that's kind of only tangentially related to the topic, but I suspect if it hasn't come up in these interviews yet, it definitely comes up on the campaign trail. So Mason County needs more resources. I believe more resources are coming. But to return to how does one set a bail, serious, if it's a domestic violence crime and you have a history of domestic violence crimes, could there ever be a situation where $1 million bail is appropriate for a misdemeanor? I don't believe so, because I think 100, and maybe we're just playing with words here, because $100,000 bail, but this is what, and I have a new reason too, which I'll get to. $100,000 bail for an indigent person is no different than $1 million bail. So if a sledgehammer will work, we don't need to bring a howitzer or Big Bertha. And when one does that, when one overplays one's hand, it undermines the integrity of the system. It doesn't engender or produce respect. It's like, really? That's silly. I don't like silly. And I'm quoting a hypothetical person when I say that. But so it's a reasonable bail to secure one's presence. Another reason it's funny is I argued against this just the other day, I think twice in two different courts in Mason County. A prosecutor said, well, Your Honor, public safety. No, once was on the record, once was in a telephone conversation with the prosecutor. I love the prosecutors. I've been one. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. But again, read the rules and pay attention to detail. And something else, I'm prepared to be wrong. But one thing I'm saying is public safety is not one of those three criteria. Of course, public safety undermines all of it. You know, there's a campaign slogan out there somewhere that says for a safer community. We all want a safer community. The question is, how do we get there? Mm-hmm. So I will say, too, at least one state, I think it was California, and I'm not advocating this. I'm just saying this happened. California just signed a bill, or I think, and he's a pinko commie left-leaning liberal Governor Jerry Brown, I think on his way out, but I believe California just abolished cash bail. People say it violates equal protection. Okay, but see, again, more problems than there are solutions, more questions than there are answers. What are we going to do? Okay, yeah, rich people can bail out, poor people can't. Okay, does that mean we abolish cash bail? And what they say was they're going to, and I did read a little of it, they're implementing a regime which costs money, which we don't have, to assess those same criteria. And then, but again, and I've heard my opponent say in a video a position that I will adopt to this limited extent. People need to know that incarceration, and I believe they do, and that may be where my opponent and I may differ to that slight degree in that particular regard. I do believe people, remember I'm talking about a system where they abolish cash bail. Well, how are we going to get people to show up if they don't have to post a bond? So, to borrow a phrase from a culture that's not mine, it's a sticky wicket, and it's a good question.
What are your views on whether the courts, and this would be all the courts or maybe localized if you feel this way, do you feel effectively dealing with racial and gender bias?
Okay, could you restate that question, please?
What are your views on whether the courts as a whole deal effectively with racial or gender bias?
I don't want to be knee-jerk in my support of anything, including the courts, but I don't. And if there are specific instances, and I can certainly, I've got some bouncing around in my back of my mind at different court levels. So I don't see that as being, and if I'm completely missing on notorious cases, then this culture is not mine. My bad. So mea culpa. But I think however the courts are doing now, I think that comes down to the particular judicial officer. I mean, I'm thinking of an example now that I won't go into, but it was a case of a particular nature where the judge, in my estimation, was not comfortable with the particular nature. And I certainly asked jurors when you're picking a jury, if this is a drug crime or an alcohol crime or a sex crime or a personal property crime or a violence crime, have you ever experienced that? Are you uncomfortable with that? Because there are at least 3 reasons why, if you're uncomfortable with that, you shouldn't be dealing with it. One is you can't focus. Another is you might have a knee-jerk react. So it goes on. I know where I stand on that. Someone in Allen 2 days ago said, how do you feel about minorities? And I joked, but I was deadly serious. I said, I'm 100% in favor of them. And then I said, well, are you talking about immigration and employment and the border and this and that? And then it turned out that this person was a homeless, mental health, and immigrant advocate. And so we had a fruitful conversation. And I could have had a fruitful conversation with somebody who says, no, I'm sick of these illegal immigrants coming across the border and taking our jobs, et cetera, which is an interesting thing about the campaign. And it takes me back to why I am the better candidate for this job. My agenda is to represent the people. I do not bring an agenda. And I guess I'm implying someone else does, and maybe I should walk that back. I'll just talk about myself. I was able to talk to that woman, and I haven't said yet whether her and my interests align. I met a man on the street the other day, and a sensitive international topic came up, and he said to me, I respect your opinion. And I said with a smile on my face, I don't think you know my opinion because I don't quite know it yet. Because I'm just trying to work through these things. And I'm fully capable of forming an opinion. And I have opinions, but I know enough to... I heard in a meeting once, somebody said, sometimes I have these opinions and I forget to stop to think that they might be wrong. So I'm very circumspect and judicious in my thinking. I'm very thorough. And there's a lot going on in the world. Changes in social mores and same-sex marriage and gender fluidity, and bring it on, because you can't stop it. It's a Joni Mitchell song, How Do You Stop? Except for I thought it was a Joni Mitchell song. It's a James Brown song. And it's a beautiful, wonderful, how do you stop the ripening corn? How do you stop a baby being born? And I'm not bringing up any other topic when I say that. What I'm saying is the times they are a-changing, including treatment courts, family reconciliation court, drug court, veterans court, mental health court. I will drop not a name, but a position when I announced to all the public officials that I would see, because I know them all personally and have for years. And I said to the head of the probation department, I said, I'm running, I'm telling you, like I told the sheriff or this, I said, I'm telling you personally so you hear it from me, and so we can talk about any thoughts you might have, so you don't think I'm trying to undermine you by keeping secrets. And the head of probation said, well, if you get elected, I hope you'll be receptive to some of our programs. And I said, you know that I will. And that's not because it's the law according to Eric. It's because that's where the world is going. And I think that's also where Mason County is going, with more money, more availability. And I'm no economist, and I'm no businessman, I'm a lawyer. Our tax base is non-existent. But now we're getting more people, and I think we're achieving critical mass, and I think good things are happening. And I'm a 57-year-old, Ivy League educated, Shelton High School graduate who knows what's going on. And I know the people, and the people know me, and they trust me.
What would be your greatest accomplishment in your legal career?
Oh, getting elected Mason County District Court Judge. My daughter joined the Marine Corps. She's a Marine right now. Made me proud, saved me a lot of money. And everybody says thank you. Yes, thank her for it. And it's a wonderful thing. I was able to see her 3 times during her training year, okay? But she said to me, she said, Dad, no one in your generation served. My father was in the Air Force. My grandfather enlisted in the Army in World War I. Didn't go anywhere. He went to Kansas. But this would be service to my community. And also, I remember a particular lawyer I worked for in a Wall Street maritime finance firm who 10 years ago, 10 years, 15 years after I left, her email back to me was, yes, everything we ever learn is always helpful. I've been training for this job my entire life. And that's why when Judge Meadows told me she was retiring, she told me personally, and she said, I'm telling you so you don't hear it from somebody else and think it's a rumor. I'm telling people. It wasn't that day that I said, oh, I'm going to run. It was a couple days later, because I know the legal community in this, and the Bar Association is meeting Wednesday, the 12th. We've each got 25 minutes. And I thought, that's my job, because it's a perfect job. I'm perfect for it, and it's a perfect fit for me. I have the skills, I have the experience, I have the mindset, and I have the desire. You know, my motivation has never been pure. I quote Charles Dickens, I do, at the end of A Tale of Two Cities, it's a far better thing I do than I have ever done before. This would be wonderful to finish my career in service to Mason County.
Well, I think you kind of explained it, but take the last minute or two, look into this camera right here, and tell the voters why they should send you to the district court position.
Oh, thank you for that, Jeff. Put me on the spot. I won't apologize too much about that. I'll take this opportunity, hopefully, and be to some degree convincing. As I just said, my motivation has never been pure. I have a friend I went to both college and law school with. He grew up in Boston. I went to Dartmouth College, which is 2.5 hours north of Boston. Dan used a word I will leave out of, I think, the last part. He said, you're from there, you're a reasonable guy, and you're wicked smart. And so then I said that up at a campaign function in Little Wap, and a nice man who turns out to have been a retired state trooper. He said, if you're so smart, why don't you run for Superior Court? And I said, I wouldn't get elected up there. That's not who I am. That's what I said. I said, I'm not sleek like that. I said, I can't play that. I'm not saying it's a game. It's wonderfully serious. And frankly, I think we have 3 really good Superior Court judges right now. And I think the ones we've had have been really good. But I want to be our district court judge. I will say on camera, I first appeared in Mason County District Court when I was 16 for a traffic ticket in front of Judge Sawyer, who went on to Superior Court. And so I'm not only the president, but I'm a member too. But again, I grew up here. I got good grades. I went to good schools. I have a good heart. I'm a good guy, and I know the law. Okay, I mentioned I'm a swimmer. I'm a national champion master swimmer. It shows I set goals, serious goals. I work hard for them. I accomplish them. I play a mean jazz trombone. I've studied hard. I take lessons with a man who lives in Olympia named Gary Scott, who played for Sinatra for 20 years in Las Vegas. Okay, but I'm not talented at either one of those things. I am talented in the law. I always have been. When people were throwing up before law school exams first year, I was ready and happy. And I had nerves, adrenaline. My parents raised us in competition to deal with stress. So I was ready, and I got straight A's my first semester at Tulane University School of Law, which was unprecedented. I and another student in my class did it. I don't know if it's been done since. You take 4 courses. You take 1 test in each. It's a 4-hour course. I'm talented at the law. But as my friend Dan Rogers from Boston, who said I'm reasonable and smart and I'm from here, he said, and I called him for advice, and he said, the law is the smaller part. And I did say this earlier. It's not about getting the law right, which I don't want to say I'm so much better at, but that's what I do. I have relationships with all the lawyers in town. They will all tell you, oh, Valley's smart, So I'm a lot of things. And I think one of them is, and I've talked to other lawyers, comments like, yeah, you would do a very good job at that. But as my neighbor Darren, I'll out him on his last name, but if you know where I live, you know who Darren is. As Darren said, the public will decide that. I said, Darren, I told him all about it. Darren's known me. Darren was 2 years behind me in high school, and we're neighbors. And I said, Darren, for all these reasons we've talked about, I said, I might be the guy. And Darren said, the public will decide that. That's where we're at. So I hope you people will vote for me. I'm asking you, please, to do that, because I honestly think, as I say, my motives have never been pure. It is for the good of Mason County now and in the distant foreseeable future. I'm talking the next 12 to 16 years if I can get elected and get reelected. I don't want to be judged for 4 years. This is what I want to do for Mason County. Thank you.
He is running for district court judge in Mason County. Eric Valley, thank you.